Hello, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm okay. I am okay. I've changed my commuting schedule. It is much
Good.
saner. I'm going in on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Fridays are amazing because nobody's there. Um, and so that's my misanthrope commute.
It's like work from home, except you're in the office, but you still don't have to see anybody.
But yes, no, like I was saying when we were texting, I do not wish to be perceived in any way. So it's perfect. Well, welcome to Goodnight, Mr. Holmes, a podcast about the Granada Sherlock Holmes, which ran on ITV in the UK between 1984 and 1994, ran on Masterpiece Mystery in the US around the same time. I'm Laura.
And I'm Rachel.
And today we are looking at episode 39 in the series, The Red Circle, and we're almost done.
Yeah, we have two more after this.
Yep. So for this episode, the producers brought back Jeremy Paul, who was the main writer for the earlier episodes.
Yeah, I noticed his name.
Yes, he left when they, basically when they stopped spending so much money.
Yeah.
The script had been written much earlier and shelved, but they were running out of material, so Granada pulled it out again and ordered rewrites.
Well, there's that one Sherlock Holmes story where Watson, he's married, but he comes back to visit. Holmes says, "Hey, I'm about to go out on a case, just help yourself to whatever." So Watson lies down on the couch, takes a nap. Then Holmes comes back and says, "I solved it. Let me tell you all." I mean, they could have adapted that one.
That's awesome. Well, the episode opens as a man is approaching a house. He's rattling his keys, and then he is attacked by two other men, and he collapses to the sidewalk, apparently dead. And there's a painted red circle that's left on a pillar of the house. Then we're shown a couple frantically packing in an apartment. They escape out a window via the fire escape as three large men break in through the front door and run up to the apartment.
The woman is wearing a green dress. I went looking.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know what I wanted to say, but I wanted to be able to quote somebody. So I found this from the River Museum in Iowa, which looks like an awesome museum.
Oh, wow.
And they have a green dress from the 19th century. So this is from their website. And I'm probably going to mispronounce the very first word of it. Is Sheely's green. It's Scheele, which I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm going to say Sheely. Sheely's green was invented in 1775. Prior to that, there were few options available to produce green textiles, which made any very costly. Sheely's green produced a yellow-green color that faded easily. Paris green was introduced in 1814 as an improvement. It offered a deeper emerald color that resisted fading. The secret to both dyes was arsenic.
Of course.
It wasn't until after World War I that safe and stable green dyes were widely available. Until then, arsenic was used to achieve the coveted green color in clothing, artificial flowers, wallpaper, and even in candy, despite knowledge that it was a poison. So her dress is probably dyed with arsenic. But they say of their green dress, if it was in fact dyed with arsenic, which only a chemical test can confirm, this dress likely posed little threat to its wearer, as undergarments would have prevented most skin contact. The greatest danger would be if the fabric got wet, such as through sweating or getting caught in the rain, as this improved skin absorption of the arsenic.
Oh, great. A dress that could kill you.
Exactly.
Well, yes, she is wearing this brilliant, almost emerald green dress. And she's wearing it throughout most of the episode. So she and her guy escape out a window down the fire escape. Three large men break in through the front door. They run up to the apartment. One of them comes in the room. He's a tall man. He's older. He's in a cape and a black hat. So obviously he's one of the good guys. And he picks up the woman's nightgown and holds it to his face. And then he yells.
Yeah, I have the note. The first thing he does is sniff underwear.
Yes, I know. A carriage approaches the docks, and the couple get out and board a ship on the White Star Line. The man says, "Amelia," and they embrace in relief. The older man has pursued them to the docks, but he cannot board the ship. He doesn't have a ticket. He's standing outside, staring up at them.
And I was assuming at this point that she was married or engaged to the older man and didn't want to be.
That's what it looks like, yeah. So the White Star Line was famously the company that sailed the Titanic.
I also had the note they're very lucky that the Titanic was a year later.
Exactly. And I'm trying to imagine a Sherlock Holmes story that involves the Titanic. That would have been amazing.
Somebody needs to write that. We should get together and write this.
And then Watson is narrating. The strange case of the red circle started in New York and ended in the Antipodes. But first, I should explain how two men with the initial G came to be in London. Gennaro was the hero, Black Giorgiano the villain, and both men loved Amelia.
And I have the note, yeah, we got that already.
Yeah. Okay, so then we go to a small row house. An old man, Mr. Warren, is trying to configure a mast for a model ship.
And I had a note, I half expected this to be Holmes in disguise.
Oh, really? Oh, that would be great.
Like this was a peek into Baker Street and Holmes was just doing something in disguise.
There's a knock at the door. Mr. Warren drops his things. He goes out to answer it. He is played by an actor called Kenneth Connor in what turned out to be his final role. And he is truly ancient looking. The man outside is asking if there's a room to let. And as Mr. Warren is dithering, his wife asks, "Who is it, Albert?" And then she comes to the door, shoos Albert back into his study, saying, "You go back to your boat." And then she asks the man at the door whether he's looking for short-term or long-term accommodations. He just ignores her and pushes past her into the house.
Sir, is the person left the room? I really do need to know how long you'll be staying here.
So this was filmed. This series of row houses, which become increasingly important throughout the episode, in the Moravian settlement in Manchester, which was also used in the Blue Carbuncle and the Resident Patient.
Oh, wow.
It was founded in 1785 as a self-sufficient community, and most of the buildings still stand today.
Wow.
Yeah. At 221B, Holmes is pasting clippings into a scrapbook or a casebook or something, and he's wearing this absolutely gorgeous silk and velvet, dark blue, midnight blue robe, which I need to own immediately. I've never seen this robe in any previous episode. He's saying, "I cannot think you have any particular reason for uneasiness, and you know I have other things to engage me."
I can think of a reason.
I can think of many reasons. As he turns around, Mrs. Warren is standing in the doorway, having been escorted up by Mrs. Hudson. Watson, by the fireplace, says, "Holmes, the matter of a lodger remaining unseen in his room for more than a week is surely of some passing interest." "If I were a lodger, she wouldn't see me for weeks on end," Holmes points out. "That doesn't concern you, does it, Mrs. Hudson?"
She's like, "Your rent would be a lot lower if that were the case."
No, nothing troubles me where you're concerned, Mr. Holmes, she says, because of course every time he does trouble her, he goes up. "But if you remember, you arranged an affair for a lodger of Mrs. Warren's a year ago." "Yes, you did, sir," Mrs. Warren says, stepping forward, and she's all in black, wearing a ridiculous little black hat with 3 red cherries on it. I mean, I just was like goggling at this tiny hat with the red cherries. It's so stupid looking. "An Italian gentleman, Mr. Fermani," she says. Holmes looks up, and I noticed here that Jeremy Brett's eyes are horribly bloodshot. I mean,
they've been like that in previous episodes as well.
This one was really stark, really stood out to me. "Enrico Firmani," he says with a slight smile. He gets up and he starts rifling through his case books. "Mr. Firmani never stopped talking of your kindness, sir," Mrs. Warren says. So she's played by an actress named Betty Marsden, who was a BBC radio star in the 1960s. She has a husky voice that's very distinctive.
Oh.
"How you brought light into the darkness," she says. "It was a Wagner night, I think," Holmes says. "Let us hear about this lodger." And he sits in his chair by the fireplace. It frightens me, Mr. Holmes, Mrs. Warren says, and she's near tears. I can't sleep for fright, hearing his footsteps moving here and moving there from early morning to late at night, and then never to catch so much as a glimpse of him. Mr. Warren is as nervous as I. And there's a shot of the Warrens in Albert's study as the gaslight goes down and footsteps sound overhead, which is clearly a callback to the movie Gaslight, which that kind of thing goes on all the time.
I was thinking haunted house, except you know what's causing it.
Yes. What's the fellow hiding from, Mr. Holmes? What's he done? You see, Mrs. Hudson says, except for the maid, she's all alone in the house with him. Mrs. Warren's face crumples. I can't stand it. My nerves can't stand it, she says, as Mrs. Hudson tries to comfort her. I guess landlady to landlady. They seem very tight in this episode. Holmes throws up his hands. Watson, hope, he says. Mrs. Hudson leads Mrs. Warren to the wicker couch, and Holmes gets up and goes around behind them. And he puts his hands down on Mrs. Warren's shoulders, and he leans in closely and presses his fingers down on her shoulder muscles. And this calms her. I guess it's like a Dr. Spock, like a Mr. Spock magic hold. Star Trek. Take time to consider, Mrs. Warren. The smallest point may be the most essential, Watson says soothingly. Mrs. Warren takes out her handkerchief and nods. Holmes goes back to his chair and dramatically gestures for her to continue her story. He came 10 days ago and he asked me my terms. So I told him 12 shillings a week. There's a small sitting room and a bedroom, all complete, up at the top of the house. And he said he'd pay me £3 a week for it. £3? Watson asks. He's utterly astonished. A shilling is 0.6 of a pound.
Yeah, £3 in 1911 is worth 458 pounds today.
Wow.
Converting that to US dollars is 618.
Okay.
Did they say a day or a week?
A week.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that comes out to $2,472 a month in today's prices. So the price of a studio apartment in Manhattan.
Yes. Well,
Maybe a little cheaper.
No, a studio apartment in like Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, where there's no parking. And notice there's no bathroom.
Yeah.
There's no.
Yeah, I do have the note. How does he bathe?
Yes. How does he bathe? Where does he use the facilities? Like, this could never happen.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Conan Doyle didn't think of this because it's housekeeping's job to think of it.
Yes.
Yes, sir, as long as I kept to his terms, Mrs. Warren says. What terms? Holmes asks. Well, he wanted a key to the house. That's all right. Most of my lodgers have them. But he was to be left entirely to himself and never on any account to be disturbed, Mrs. Warren says. There's nothing very wonderful in that, Holmes says. I guess he means weird.
Yeah.
Well, not in reason, but this is all out of reason, Mrs. Hudson chimes in. He's been there 10 days, morning, noon, and night, and neither she nor Mr. Warren nor the maid has once set eyes on him. And apart from the first night, he's never once gone out, Mrs. Warren says.
He must smell terrible.
I know. Days. He did go out the first night, Holmes asks. Oh, yes, he did. He returned very late. I'd gone to bed, but Mr. Warren saw him. It was after midnight he'd come back. And we see the stranger coming in from the outside and hurrying up the stairs. His hat is pulled very low and his coat is all like fluffed up around the collar.
Yeah, so you don't see the face at all.
No. His meals, Watson says. Surely he eats. Well, he rings when he wants them. We just put them on a chair outside his door. If he wants anything else, he writes it on a bit of paper. Just in pencil. Just the one word. Nothing more. And she hands the papers that he's been writing on to Holmes. The maid leaves the Daily Chronicle with him every morning at breakfast. Why is it printed? Holmes asks. Well, to conceal his handwriting, Watson says. Watson deduce, Holmes says, handing the papers to him. Me? Watson chuckles and takes the papers. Well, the pencil is broad-tipped and violet tinted, and yeah, it was kind of purplish. Yeah. And it's used with considerable pressure. The paper's been torn off the side before the printing was done, and so you can see the S of soap is partly And then he glances down at Holmes, kind of realizing that he's being put on the spot. Like he's waiting for the setup for Holmes to come in and say, "Oh, no, you've got this all wrong."
Yeah.
But Holmes doesn't. He just says, "Suggesting haste," Watson says. "Or caution," Holmes says. "The man's age and appearance?" he asks Mrs. Warren. "Oh, he's under 30, sir. He's very dark, middle height, clean shaven, has an accent like Mr. Fermani. Of course, no name," Holmes says. "No, sir," she says. "And what kind of landlady takes in a lodger and you don't ask the name?" I mean, I know cash is king, but still.
Sure, use my house for illegal purposes. That's fine. You just robbed 6 banks? Not a problem.
No letters, no callers? None, sir. His luggage, labels, stickers? She frowns, and then she says, "White Star." "New York," Holmes says. "I think we must wait until we have a little more material." Then he says, "Please vanish, both of you."
I would love to be able to say that to people.
And he turns his back on them. Watson ushers them to the door and says, "Leave it to me, Mrs. Hudson," before he closes it. Holmes is at his desk back at scrapbooking. "You must admit there are some points of interest," Watson says, going back to the fireplace. "Only that the man in the rooms may not be the one who engaged them," Holmes says. "Yes, of course, I hadn't thought of that. And he went out immediately after taking the rooms and returned at midnight," Watson says. "Why a substitution?" "Well, it opens up a pleasurable field for intelligent speculation, and there is one line of investigation." Mrs. Warren's former lodger, Enrico Firmani of Naples," Holmes says. "He works backstage at the Royal Opera House. I helped him find a close relative once. A simple matter." 37 Catchpole Street," Watson says, looking in Holmes's casebook. "You've added something. A friend to his fellow countrymen in need. Do you suppose he could have recommended his former lodgings to a fellow countryman in need?" "Possibly," Holmes says. It doesn't explain the lodger's behavior," Watson says. Holmes holds up a red chess piece, a king, and he stares at it. "Behavior? What behavior?" Because there isn't any.
Right. Yeah, we don't know enough.
Next, Watson is at the home of Enrico Firmani. He and his mother are sitting down to a cold supper, a dried salami, some hard cheese, bread, fruit, a carafe of wine. I can tell you, as someone who's been in a long-term relationship with an Italian man, that is typical. And it's so good. It looks sparse. It's not. Watson standing by the table. "How do you know this address?" Fermani is asking. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes," Watson says. "He keeps a record of his past clients." "But if Holmes has something to ask, why does he not come himself? Why send you, Dr. Watson?" "Well, I do on occasion act for myself," Watson says. Which
He'd have had more credibility if he'd said Holmes is busy with other things right now.
I know, and it's a bad idea for Watson to act for himself.
Yeah.
As we will see. "Well," Fermani says, picking up a paring knife, and he's going at a pear with it. "I cannot help you, I'm afraid. I know nothing of this lodger of Mrs. Warren's." But Fermani is not looking at Watson. He's looking over at his mother as he says this. "Is perhaps a countryman of yours recently arrived from America and in need of help?" Watson asks. "Then tell him I am here if he needs me," Fermani says. "That is all I can say." And he takes a gulp of wine. "Excuse me, I must go to work now." Watson throws a glance at a newspaper on the table about an Italian man being murdered in Brooklyn. "It may be that Mrs. Warren needs help," Watson says, as Fermani gets up from the table. "The man is disturbing their household." "Why?" Fermani says, and he's looking concerned as he takes a coat off a peg on the door. "What does he do to them?" "It's more a case of what he doesn't do. He doesn't appear from dawn till dusk. He has his meals on a tray left outside the door. If he's a fugitive from justice, we should turn him over to the police," Watson says. "Police," Fermani says, shrugging his coat on. "No, no, no." He bends and kisses his mother, saying, "Caro," which means dear. As he does this, Watson slides the newspaper under his hat. "If there is ever a problem," Fermani says, "Holmes knows where to find me, at the theater. Not here, never here. Do you understand?" You have enemies in your line of work, Watson asks.
Yes, it's very common for stagehands to have mortal enemies.
Everyone has enemies, whatever they do. It's true of life, Fermani says, putting on his scarf. But some are more at risk than others with their beliefs and their courage, Watson says. I do what I do, Dottore. Don't make me out to be a saint, Fermani replies. Now,
Okay, Mr. Corleone.
sorry?
Okay, Mr. Corleone.
Now, please, excuse me. He opens the front door, ushers Watson out, and follows him. In the dining room, Fermani's mother picks up the dinner dishes, and one of the glasses has left a red circle of a wine stain on the table. And I'm like, use coasters. She stares at it, crossing herself. Back at 221B, Holmes is still at his desk. Another chess piece has joined the Red King. This is all reflected in his magnifying glass. Watson is reading from the newspaper that he stole from Fermani. Signor Zamba of Castellati and Zamba, chief fruit importers of New York, was stabbed repeatedly on the steps of his mansion. Now,
You said it's red delicious, but it tastes like wallpaper. Lies.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So, okay. Yes. I will never eat a red delicious apple. But yes, the Italians were importing lots and lots of fruit at that time in the early, late 1800s, early 1900s. That's the time period that Godfather 2 is set in, where Corleone works for a fruit importer. He was stabbed repeatedly on the steps of his mansion. Now, this is dated 8 weeks ago. Watson's pacing as he reads. Of course, he's describing the scene that the episode opened with, the attack. Detective Rimmer of the Pinkerton Agency, Abe Rimmer, Holmes mutters, said at the scene of the slaying, we believe this is the work of a Neapolitan society, allied to the old Carbonari, known as the Red Circle. So the Carbonari were real. They were a network of small cells scattered throughout Italy, dedicated to Italian unification and a detachment from Catholic religious authority. And they were primarily active in the early part of the 1800s. According to the annotated, Conan Doyle had originally written Camorra, which is a Neapolitan mafia that is still somewhat in existence today. The older dons are dying out. There's a lot of jockeying for position among what are called baby gangs, younger men looking to ascend the hierarchy. In that way, it's kind of similar to how the U.S. mafia was in the 1980s and 90s before RICO laws brought a lot of them down. Anyway, yes, the Carbonari were real.
I also looked up what was going on in Italy in 1911. This doesn't have anything to do with the story. But September 1911 was the beginning of the Italo-Turkish War, which is considered to be a precursor to World War I.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I know
Italy won. They ended up with some colonies because of it.
Oh, you know what? Garibaldi came out to Staten Island and lived for a while.
Really?
There's a whole, the house where he lived is like now this preserved, not quite a museum, but like a cultural center kind of thing. And very important to all of the Italian Americans who live on Staten Island, who are legion.
Yeah.
Famous throughout Europe, a branch has now been planted in Brooklyn, Watson's reading. Detectives are anxious to question a Giuseppe Giorgiano. He stops pacing for a moment. Fermani was hiding something else. I can't describe the feeling, but there was an old woman who I took to be his mother. His mother? You entered his home? Holmes asked. Yes, Watson says, failing to see why this is a bad idea. A face full of sorrows and secrets, Holmes says. Is this the person that you held, Holmes? If you're holding something back, I should like you to tell me, Watson says. By going to his home, you may have put Fermani's life in danger, Holmes says.
Yeah, but Watson, he's just an average white guy. Like, how would anybody know why he was there?
Because he's Dr. Watson.
Yeah, but it's not like his picture was in the papers or anything. People know his name, but they don't necessarily know what he looks like.
Well, if you take as canon the Abominable Bride, yes, they do know, because he's had to grow a mustache. Yeah, I know. It makes no sense, but very little does. He's a point of refuge for the Italian community in London, Holmes tells him, a beacon of light, if you will, in a dark web of devilry. On the desk, Holmes has arranged the red chess pieces in a circle. Watson approaches the desk and whispers, "The red circle, God, and this Giorgiano." "Black Giorgiano," Holmes says. "He's earned the name of death, La Morte, in southern Italy and far beyond. He's red, up to his elbows in mud." "Is it possible that this Black Giorgiano is the man at Mrs. Warren's?" "No, but there may be some connection. Watson, we have work to do." He gets up abruptly from his desk. "The Opera House," Watson says, and they grab their coats and begin racing out the door. "And then Charing Cross to send a telegram to my friend Abe Rimmer." At the Opera House, there's a rehearsal going on. A woman is singing over the supposed corpse of her fallen lover. Fermani is managing the lighting. He's working with a red cell over the light. And you did theater lighting.
Yeah. I don't know what it would have been in 1911. We refer to them as gels. They were basically just sheets of colored plastic that you would put in front of the light.
Yep. So he's got one of these over the light, which forms yet another red circle. This is in reality the Buxton Opera House in the spa town of Buxton near Manchester.
Oh.
They did not go to the Royal Opera House. A man in a hat approaches Fermani. It's Giorgiano. "Enrique Fermani," he says in a deep voice, "you have been troublesome to me for a long time, but now you help me in return for your life."
And the actors below say, "Hey, stop talking up there, we're rehearsing."
Sing. He pulls out a dagger and he holds it across Fermani's throat. "Gennaro Luca, where are you hiding him?" And Fermani shakes his head. The music crescendos. And as the opera diva looks up, she sees Fermani dangling upside down from the balcony where he's been working, his neck and throat and chest covered in blood. She screams. We can see her fillings in her back teeth.
You can.
You can. Holmes and Watson arrive as the police are taking out Fermani's body.
Good job, Watson.
And the opera people are looking shell-shocked and stricken. Bobby tries to stop Holmes, but then recognizes him and lets him pass through. He and Watson go to the stage door. The candles lining the stage are still lit. A man on the balcony above the stage where Fermani was killed greets Holmes. "Hawkins, what brings you here?" Holmes calls out. "Same thing that brings you, I expect," Inspector Hawkins says. "How you got onto it so fast, I can't imagine." "Different threads leading up to the same tangle," Holmes says. "We've come to see Enrico Fermani," Watson says. "Fermani's dead, found with his throat cut less than 2 hours ago," Hawkins tells them. "Up here, the murderer got clean away, I'm afraid." Holmes looks devastated. "Watson," he says, and the two leave. At 221B, Watson is feeling terrible, guilt-ridden. "You were right, Holmes. I should not have gone to see Enrico. Might have saved a life." "I don't think you can blame yourself for that," Holmes says, which... Yes, you can.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is uncharacteristically kind of Holmes. He's wrapped himself in a blanket. He's standing by a lit candle, looking utterly morose. It's almost like a religious scene. It's a single candle below him, throwing a glow up his face. "Golden boys and girls all must, as chimney sweepers, come to dust," he says, quoting Shakespeare's Cymbeline. He turns around, placing a finger to his lips in thought. A person arrives alone in London. He seeks help from Fermani, his fellow countryman, who places him to safety in Mrs. Warren's lodgings. Then Fermani is murdered rather than giving away the hiding place, Watson says. No, Holmes says, holding his hands up dramatically.
Maybe he gave away the hiding place and was killed anyway.
Of that we can't be sure. But who killed him? Giorgiano? Is Giorgiano in England? What does he want with this lodger? The person in that room is entirely alone and at risk. I mean, even a letter might be intercepted, Watson says. How does a message reach him from the outside? Except by the most valuable hunting ground ever given to the student of the unusual. Holmes tosses off his blanket, his magnificent blue robe billowing behind him as he races for the newspapers that are hanging from rods in the corner. So when I was a page back at the local library back in Seaford, I had to thread newspapers onto these rods every day.
Well, I bet that sucked.
And I mean, you had to like make sure the sections were separated because the rods had slits in them. And then we had to store up the back issues for a week under the front desk in case anybody needed to. Yeah. Agony columns, Watson says. We need only concern ourselves with the Daily Chronicle of the past 2 weeks, Holmes says, throwing newspapers onto the floor, which our lodger collects every morning after breakfast. And they both kneel on the floor going through the papers. And I was thinking, at least Holmes is keeping them on their wooden rods instead of tossing sheets of newsprint all around the way he normally does.
Yeah, he lays them out in a circle, I noticed.
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, dear me, Holmes exclaims. What a chorus of cries and groans. What a ragbag of singular happenings. Lady with a feather boa at Prince's Skating Club, he reads out loud. Holmes, listen to this, Watson says. Be patient. We will find some means of communication. Meanwhile, this column, G. And Watson flips through another editions as Holmes asks, can you pick up a trace again? Ah, here we are. I am making some successful arrangements. Patience and prudence. The cloud will pass. G. Watson flips through some more as Holmes gestures impatiently. Here, the path is clearing. If I find a chance to signal message, remember code as agreed. That's 2 days ago. Holmes gets up and goes to the door. Mrs. Hudson! He opens the door and she turns around. What is it, Mr. Holmes? I'm washing curtains, she says. Right outside his door.
Yeah, in the hallway, not washing curtains.
Not in the laundry room. The Daily Chronicle, yesterday and today, if you'd be so kind, he says, and shuts the door. Patience and prudence, he mutters. The affair begins to grow more intelligible. Back at the Warrens, someone is leaving their house and is abducted by 2 other men who throw a coat over that person's head and hustle them into a carriage. As the carriage races through the countryside, one of the men pulls the coat off the victim. It is Mr. Warren, petrified, praying,
and very bewildered.
Yes. The abductor, Black Giordano, of course, screams curses in Italian. At 221B, Watson is racing up the stairs to the flat. I found it. House with porch and black door, first floor, window right, after dusk, G. He hands the paper to Holmes.
And remember, in England, the first floor is the second floor to Americans.
Yep. Black Giordano. Could it be a trap to draw the person out? That's unlikely, Holmes says, flipping through the rest of the paper. Should we tell the police what we know about the red circle? Watson asks. Tell the police, Holmes yells.
A crime's probably committed. Why should we tell the police?
They find it difficult enough to deal with the facts without confusing them with our suppositions. Oh, listen to this. Holmes reads from an article about Fermani's murder. Motiveless murder, according to Inspector Hawkins. Really? Mrs. Hudson runs upstairs into the flat. Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, you must come quickly. There's been a kidnapping. So they go over to the Warrens. Watson is checking over Albert while Mrs. Warren is irate. This is a police matter, Mr. Holmes. I'm throwing that lodger out. I'd have gone straight up and told him so. She thought it only right to ask your opinion first, Mr. Holmes, Mrs. Hudson interjects. A large pot of tea, Mrs. Hudson, Holmes says. And this reminded me, so my ex-husband was very, very good friends with a guy who at the time was a paramedic. And he said the whole idea of sending someone to boil water was
it's to get them out of the way, right?
Get them out of the way, yes. So going to make a large pot of tea, like get out.
Yeah.
The women make their way past Holmes into the kitchen. I'm at the end of my patience when it comes to knocking my old man around, Mrs. Warren says, and she's grabbing Holmes by the arms. Who knocked him about? Holmes asks. I wish I knew. Happened this morning, sir. Mr. Warren, he's a timekeeper at Norton and Waylights on Tottenham Court Road. I could not find what Norton and Waylights was, so it's made up.
Yeah.
He has to leave the house at 7 a.m. It would be a great help if I could speak to him myself, Holmes says. All right, Mrs. Warren says, and she goes back to hover over the sofa where Mr. Warren is sitting, so not out of the way. Take care, Holmes. His heart, Watson says, pulling his stethoscope out of his ears. Can you speak, Mrs. Warren? Holmes asks. Mr. Warren, Holmes asks. Well, I hadn't gone 10 paces before 2 men crept up behind me, Albert says, and threw a coat over his head, bundled him off into a cab and drove off, and shot him out, Mrs. Warren says, on Hampstead Heath.
This is actually very funny.
Yes, Hampstead Heath, agrees Albert. Dreadful, Holmes says. What did you observe? I took a bus home, Albert says. Before the bus. These men, did you observe their appearance? No, sir. I was picked up as if by magic and dropped as if by magic, Albert says, enormously unhelpfully. 3 of them was in on it, maybe 4. Did you hear them talk? Holmes asks. One of them swore some oaths in Italian, Albert says. Money is not everything. I'll have him out of here before the day's done, Mrs. Warren says, and she's waving her finger dramatically. I should like to meet this lodger of yours. What time does he take his lunch? Holmes asks. 1 o'clock sharp, Mrs. Warren says. Is there anywhere we might conceal ourselves? Holmes asks. Yes, there's a box room upstairs, Mrs. Warren says. So, a box room.
I was just going to ask.
Is the upstairs room in a British house, which was used to store boxes, trunks, and other things, kind of like a postage stamp sized attic. It's not big enough for much else, although some unfortunate children have to make do with a box room as their actual bedroom. Just because, yeah, I remember arguments over whose room was bigger when I was a kid. Is there a looking glass? Holmes asks. Oh, and it also made me think of some luxury apartments now include an Amazon room, it's called. And it's where you store your boxes that you order your Amazon shit from before you open them. Because you're so busy, you can't be bothered. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Amazon room. Yes, there's a looking glass on the chest of drawers outside on the landing, Mrs. Warren says. Excellent. Come, Watson, Holmes says, flipping his scarf over his shoulder and leaving. What about me then? Albert calls after them as Mrs. Hudson brings in the tea. Albert was like, I'm getting so much attention now. We've got 40 minutes, Holmes says, leading Watson away from the Warrens' house. Watson turns around and looks back up at the window of the mysterious lodger, then catches up with Holmes. It's clear now his enemies mistook their man, Watson says. What would they have done if they got him? Bears no thinking. But they didn't, Holmes says. Do you see what I see? Watson turns around and looks down the street. A house with a porch and a black door. With a room to let, Holmes says, gesturing at the sign in the first/second floor window, to which G could have access. Holmes, I feel very strongly that we should inform Scotland Yard, Watson says. Not yet, Holmes says. We are on watch, maybe being watched. Let us see what lies behind these lodgings. And they walk away. And yes, they are being watched by Giorgiano. Back inside the Warrens, Watson asks, how is he feeling? Oh, he's all right, Mrs. Warren says. He just likes a fuss made over him. The men follow her up the stairs to the landing. She goes back down and they continue on up the stairs. There's a mirror over a bureau that Holmes tilts to the correct angle, and he and Watson hide in the box room. A maid brings up the lunch, sets it on the chair outside the room, and leaves. Then the doorknob turns. Holmes shuts the door to the box room to just a crack and watches in the mirror as Amelia comes out of the room to get her tray.
And the whole time this was going on, I was thinking, she didn't hear their footsteps going up and not coming down?
Or, yeah.
Didn't hear any of this? Sure.
She sees Holmes in the mirror and she gasps. Holmes holds up a finger to his lips. She leaves her lunch, retreats back inside the room. Holmes and Watson go downstairs. Holmes instructs Mrs. Warren, bolt the door and let no one in until we return. Did you see him? She asks. Mrs. Warren, trust me, Holmes says emphatically. He and Watson go over to the house with the room to let. The owner is showing them around the upstairs, which is completely empty. There's no furniture or anything. It's
nice rooms, though.
Yeah, they are. It's actually 2 rooms. So same situation as Mrs. Warren's. There's a main room and a sitting room. I don't know when he's coming back, the owner says. He gave me some money and I haven't seen him since. A foreign gentleman, you say? Holmes asks. Definitely, and I don't care for foreigners, the owner says. Oh, really? Holmes kind of sneers. So if you want it, gentlemen, I'm sure we can come to some kind of arrangement, the man says. I'll be in the hall, sir, when you're finished, he tells Watson, handing him the key. And I'm like, wait, you're double dipping.
Yep.
Holmes goes to the window. He's holding aside the lace curtain. Perfect. Look, Watson, the first floor window of the lodgings, our agitated lady. Amelia's shadow flickers behind her own lace curtain. Only a few more hours to wait before the signal. After dusk, G, Watson says, it has all the makings of some love escapade. Love, Holmes says, going over to a small trunk and sitting on it. Love may be at the root of it, but her face, oh, Watson, her face. She fears for her life. I consider a couple seeking refuge in London from some instant and terrible fear. The man desires her utmost safety and arranges to communicate in such original fashion that not even the landlady knows of the substitution. And those printed messages to prevent the fact that she's a woman being revealed by her handwriting, Watson says. Which, I mean, back then, fair.
Mm-hmm.
Now we all have terrible handwriting.
Yes.
We're used to keyboards. Look, Holmes says, staring into the unlit fireplace. A candle and matches. He makes a whooshing gesture with his hand. Their signal. So basically, one of them would light a candle and hold a hand over it, and like not quite Morse code, but kind of like that.
Yeah, the kind of the Baskervilles signaling.
Right, exactly. But there's no need for this now, surely, Watson says. Can't we just simply bring them together and guarantee that we protect them forever from the red circle? Holmes says, shaking his head. We must let this thing play out. As Watson is relocking the door, Holmes says, I must return briefly to Baker Street. Do you have reason enough to stay in the lodgings? Mr. Warren's health gives me every excuse, Watson says. It might be advisable for me to bring you back your revolver, Holmes comments. No need, old man. I have it, Watson says, going down the stairs. Oh, splendid, Holmes says. I'll see you within the hour. Inspector Hawkins is at 221B waiting for Holmes' return. Hawkins, journey's end with lover's meeting, Holmes cries, coming upstairs.
Which is another Shakespeare quote. This one's from Twelfth Night.
Yep. I'll do you this justice, Mr. Holmes, Hawkins says. I was never on a case where I didn't feel stronger having you on my side. Holmes hands Hawkins a telegram, which Hawkins reads out. Fugitives may be Gennaro and Amelia Luca. If so, grave danger. Expect agent immediately. Regards, Abe Rimmer. He looks up at Holmes. The agent's here. He arrived from New York this morning. His name's Leverton. Leverton, I know of him, Holmes says. The man he's after is Black Giorgiano, leader of the Red Circle, Hawkins says. He smiles slightly. Did we score over you for once, Mr. Holmes? You must give us best some of the time. Holmes twitches a smile. I think that we should pool our resources. At the Warrens, the maid is going up the stairs to put her cleaning things in the box room. Above her, the trap door to the roof creaks open. She stares, frightened, and runs downstairs. In the living room, Watson is administering some kind of tonic to Albert when he hears rustling, and he runs out of the room just in time to catch the maid, who is on the verge of fainting. Mrs. Warren grabs the maid from Watson, puts a hand over her mouth as Watson rushes upstairs. He pulls out his revolver as a man in a black coat is descending from the trap door. It is Holmes. Keep the peace downstairs, he tells Watson. I must have a word with Signora Luca. Watson goes downstairs. Holmes knocks on Amelia's door. She's cowering on the bed, not answering. Signora Luca, it's Sherlock Holmes. I must speak to you. His voice is gentle but firm. Oh, no, she says. Your husband Gennaro will be safe, and so will you, if you will place yourself in our hands, he says. Scotland Yard is watching the house, and Mr. Leverton is on his way from New York. Mr. Leverton, she asks, sitting up and staring at the door. We shall not let any harm come to you. Please let me in. Please. And Amelia unlocks the door. Downstairs, the maid is sobbing, and Mrs. Warren is fanning her with her apron as Mrs. Hudson bends over her. I'm not going up there again, never, the maid is saying.
Quick, give her some brandy.
Yes, I know. Where's Watson? Don't be silly, dear, Mrs. Warren says, still fanning. You heard what the doctor says. It was just a cat scratching. The maid is not having this. No, it wasn't, she said. It lifted, meaning the trapdoor. Mrs. Hudson, would you make Vera a cup of tea? Watson says from the living room where he is taking Albert's pulse. And Mrs. Hudson probably knows to put brandy in the tea.
Probably.
What is going on in this house? Noises, lights going off. This will be the death of me, Albert says, as Mrs. Warren bursts into sobs again. Upstairs, Amelia and Holmes are seated, facing each other. I was born in Pasalipo, near Naples, she's telling him. My father was chief lawyer. Gennaro had no money and no position, nothing, but his beauty, his strength, and energy. My father forbade the match. We ran away. We were married in Bari. I sold my jewels to bring us to America. Fortune smiled at first. Gennaro saved a rich Italian from some ruffians in the Bowery. We flash back to a scene in a beautiful, big house where Amelia is talking happily with two older men, and she begins dancing with one. He was Signor Castellati of Castellati and Zamba, the fruit importers. Gennaro became like a son to him. And Castellati grabs Gennaro, pulls him towards Amelia, encouraging them to dance together. So that scene was filmed at Croxteth Hall, which was also used for the Countess of Morcar's hotel room in the Blue Carbuncle.
Oh.
Yeah. It's in West Derby, a suburb of Liverpool, and was historically the home of the Earls of Sefton, but the last Earl died in 1972. The building came under the management of the Liverpool City Council, and much of the estate was sold off. There was a global search to find an heir to Croxteth Hall, but it was unsuccessful. I volunteered. So it being a filming location makes a lot of sense as a way to produce revenue.
Yeah.
It's currently under repair and renovation in an attempt to turn it into a tourist attraction. I always love researching the big houses.
Yeah.
And finding out like what happened to the lords and ladies who lived in them and ultimately had to sell them so that they could be turned into filming locations. Tell me about this visitor, this friend of yours from Pasalipo, Holmes says. Oh, he's no friend, Amelia tells him. Gennaro brought him home one day. They met in the street. He came again and again. He talked and raved about politics and social questions and what he meant to do, whirling his great arm. And yeah, the flashback is of Giorgiano standing in Gennaro and Amelia's tiny parlor, declaiming as they sit and listen. His voice was like thunder in our little house. And your husband? Holmes asked. He sat pale and listless. At first I thought it was dislike, but then I understood it was a deep secret fear. I implored him out of love for me, by all we held dear, to tell me why this man overshadowed him. In his wild young days, when all the world seemed against him, he had joined a brotherhood, Il Cerchio Rosso, the Red Circle. He thought its purpose was to put right the injustice of life. Once you've taken its dreadful oath, and then she breaks off, sobbing.
When you're a jet all the way.
Yes! Oh, God. Brava! Tell me about you, Holmes says, and Giorgiano. I had noticed for some time when he came to us, his eyes were always turned upon me, these terrible, glaring eyes. And one evening, I had awakened what he called love in him. In the flashback, Giorgiano enters their apartment and grabs Amelia as she's answering the door, and he pushes her up against the wall, and he starts kissing her forcibly. But it was the love of a brute, a savage.
I think she means a rapist.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. No, bingo. A man who comes in, takes what he wants, and then throws away the garbage. So they're struggling, and Gennaro comes running in. He pulls Giorgiano off of Amelia. Giorgiano hits Gennaro and leaves. A few days later, there was a Red Circle meeting. Signor Castellati had been approached for money and had refused them. Now they planned to kill him. They drew lots. It was fixed. It was Giorgiano's revenge for my having rejected him. And so we see the men sitting around a table, Giorgiano at the head. Gennaro, caro amico, my dearest friend in all the world. He gets up and he puts his hand on Gennaro's shoulders. And you both went to the police, Holmes asks. I went alone, she says. That was brave, Holmes tells her. Yes, but what has it done? They got us away, but friends still die. We shall never be rid of that beast, never. She bows her head. And now you must go. I've said too much and broken my promise to my husband. Holmes puts on his hat and goes to the door as she keeps urging him to leave, and she locks the door behind him. The next scene is of Fermani's funeral. Gennaro is there, which struck me as not being safe.
Yeah.
A man walks over to him and gives him 2 tickets. Enrico would have wished it. Go sail into a new life, the man says. Gennaro embraces him in thanks, and he leaves. After Holmes leaves Amelia's room, he goes back out onto the roof. Lurking below is Giordano. Inside, on the ground floor, Watson is dozing as Albert says to Mrs. Warren, he can't stay here all night. Well, if he has to, won't you, Doctor? Mrs. Warren says as Watson blinks awake. Albert smiles mischievously. Well, in that case, I wouldn't mind a game of whist. He's just used to getting his way. Holmes is exploring the back of the house as this is going on. Do you play whist, Doctor? Mrs. Warren asks as Watson's checking out the window.
Yeah, spoiler, we never do find out if Watson plays whist.
Yes, exactly. Upstairs, Amelia lights a lamp by her window. The door to the roof, that trap door, creaks open. Amelia goes to her door and says, Mr. Holmes? Giordano replies, Amelia, mi amore. He rattles her doorknob and keeps speaking in Italian as she sinks to the floor in horror. And I'm like, so basically Holmes has laid a trap, but she's the bait.
Yeah.
Outside the Warrens' house, Holmes greets Hawkins, who tells him he's got constables on watch. What are you expecting to happen? He asks. There are times when the art of detection has little use, Holmes says. We must wait upon the unpredictable. I have some experience of that in my time, Hawkins replies. I can only say that we are expecting Signora Luca's husband. You must let him pass. Your men must not distract him, Holmes says. They know that, Hawkins says. And the murderer? Oh, he's around, Holmes says, and he gives a little laugh, somewhere, waiting his chance. We have a description from the American, Leverton. We'll be ready, Hawkins says. Holmes pivots and looks up at the roof. There's a man up on the roof chasing Giordano. They tumble down the fire escape. Holmes is at the bottom. Giordano grasps Holmes's walking stick, which is a sword cane, and he slices open his hand. And he puts that bloody hand on Holmes's face before running off. Inside, blotting.
Not really sure why he did that, but
no. Well, putting his hand on Holmes's face was actually Brett's idea, because apparently some of the criticism in the press was that Holmes was being too distant and not fully involved, and he felt like if he had blood on his face, it would be shown and that he was invested. I mean, Jeremy Brett's ideas were not always the best ideas. Inside, blotting his face with a handkerchief, Holmes knocks on Amelia's door. Signora Luca, you must give me the signal, she says. Go away. I don't trust you. I trust no one but my husband, she says on the other side of the door. Downstairs, Watson is treating Leverton, who is also sliced by the escaping Giordano. Holmes comes down to a very worried Mrs. Hudson, and Watson introduces him to Leverton. Leverton, of the Long Island Cave mystery. I'm honored to meet you, Holmes bellows. He comes in and shakes Leverton's hand. The honor is mine, sir, Leverton says. I'm sorry we had to meet like this. You're a brave man, Holmes says. I saw you up on the roof. And when you are on the trail of a lifetime, Mr. Holmes, you put all thoughts of personal safety out of your mind, Leverton says. He is played by an actor named Carrie Shale, who voiced the train Gordon in the U.S. version of Thomas the Tank Engine for over 200 episodes.
wow.
Yeah, I knew his voice as a mom. I knew his voice sounded familiar. The brute got away, I suppose, he says. Yes, but he'll be back soon. There's something in this house that he wants madly, Holmes says. Oh, yes, I know, Leverton says, standing up and assuring Watson he's okay. Is the lady upstairs safe? Yes, but trusting no one, and we must wait for her husband's signal, Holmes says. What signal, Mr. Holmes? Leverton asks. So upstairs, Amelia's lit her lamp. Holmes leads Leverton and Watson to a window on the ground floor, looking across the street up at the empty room they'd been inspecting earlier. So Gennaro Luco is over there now? Leverton asks. Not yet, but he will be, I hope, Holmes says. I couldn't find Luca when I got to London, Leverton says. My contact was Enrico Fermani, but the brute reached him first, and he must have made him talk before killing him. Should we not go upstairs to reassure Mrs. Luca? Watson asks, because, of course, he would. She's a pretty lady.
Mm-hmm.
She won't admit us, Holmes says. She'll only answer to her husband. Oh, look, Hawkins. Not too conspicuous.
Oh, look, a black kitty is also in that scene.
Yes, yeah, Hawkins is outside looking exactly like a detective inspector. And a black cat crosses his path. And this is not Chekhov's cat. We never see the cat again. Yeah. Yes, Inspector Hawkins, Leverton says. He seems an able fellow. One of Scotland Yard's finest. He knows his business, Holmes says. Just then, a young couple comes out of the house across the street. As they leave, a man enters the house. Gentleman, Holmes says, Gennaro Luca has just gone in. So far, so good, Leverton says. Mrs. Luca came to us the night the Red Circle planned to kill Castellotti. They'd already murdered his partner, Zamba. We managed to round up most of the gang, but Black Giorgiano slipped the net. When we heard he left for England, I followed after him as fast as I could. I got in touch with Scotland Yard, but he'd gone to ground.
Whoever's paying them must have a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Just then, a hansom cab comes slowly up the street, and a couple are behind the cab. One of whom goes into the house where Gennaro is. It's Giorgiano. He stabs the landlady. I was never clear who this woman was.
Yeah.
As Gennaro lights his candle upstairs, Emilia's face lights up when she sees it in the window. It's a single light. What does it mean? Leverton asks. 2 lights, Holmes says, as the candle reappears. Then, as the candle goes out, gone. No, there it is again, Leverton says. 3 lights.
It's gone for like 2 seconds.
Yes. 3 lights, measured slow, Holmes says. What is he saying? What does it mean? Leverton asks. Nothing, hisses Holmes. But his next actions must confirm it. He must come here to collect her. At his window with his candle, Gennaro turns around at a creaking on the stairs behind him. The candle goes out. It's gone, Holmes says, surprised. Message received. But what message? Leverton asks. Giorgiano enters Gennaro's rooms. Gennaro, my dearest friend in all the world, and betrayer of the Brotherhood, he says, pulling out a dagger. Emilia watches as shadows and light flicker in Gennaro's window. Holmes is watching too. There's no message, Holmes says. There's someone with him. And there's a slamming sound. Watson, Holmes asks. Did you hear that, Holmes? Watson asks. Danger, Holmes says. My God, look, she's out there on the street, Leverton says. Emilia's running over to the house where Gennaro is. Holmes abruptly leaves his post by the window and calls out, Watson, as he runs outside after her, and the music crescendos again. Emilia runs up the stairs of the other house. Watson and Holmes are running along the street to the house, and Holmes is yelling, Hawkins, your murderer is up there. Impossible. There's only one entrance, Hawkins says. And I was like, oh, not great for fire safety.
Yeah.
They all run along together with Leverton and Hawkins bickering over who gets the credit for bagging Giorgiano. Upstairs, Emilia enters Gennaro's rooms. There are bloodstains on the floor. He is nowhere to be seen. She follows the stains into the smaller room off to the side and sees Giorgiano lying on the floor with his own dagger in his chest. A spray of blood is in the shape of a circle on the wall above him. She falls into Gennaro's arms. He is bleeding as well. They sink to the floor, holding one another, as Holmes and Watson and the other men come in. As Holmes starts towards Giorgiano's corpse, he places a reassuring hand on Emilia's shoulder.
Yeah, good thing he got involved. It really changed the outcome here.
I know. Yes. Watson, take them away from this horror, he says. So the couple sit on a bench in the hall outside the rooms, embracing. Gennaro pulls out 2 tickets to Australia, which he'd been handed at Fermani's funeral, as Emilia sobs gratefully. But Hawkins comes over to them. I'll take those tickets, sir, he says. Please, Gennaro says, our ship sails at dawn. Hawkins holds out his hand. Gennaro hands him the tickets. Leverton sidles over to Hawkins. What are you going to do with them, Inspector? He'll be arrested and tried for the murder of Giordano, Hawkins says. That is the law. Well, I don't know what your British law may be, Leverton says disapprovingly, but I can tell you in New York, this lady's husband will receive a pretty general vote of thanks. And that's a direct lift from the original story.
Mhm.
Watson walks over to Hawkins. So Hawkins is now stuck between the two men. There's not a judge on earth that would condemn this man, Watson says. I don't think Mr. and Mrs. Luca have much to fear, Hawkins says, but we have to go through the procedures. He nods at a constable. Take them downstairs. A frightened Amelia and frustrated Gennaro are escorted out. Holmes appears in the doorway to the hall. No doubt if you'd been here on your own, Mr. Holmes, you'd have found a different solution, Hawkins says.
Are you implying I sometimes engage in extrajudicial justice, sir?
The law is what we live with, Inspector. Justice is sometimes harder to achieve, Holmes says. So yes. He walks past the men to yet another window and looks out. What I don't understand is how you came to be mixed up in all of this in the first place, Hawkins says. Holmes doesn't turn around. Good night, Inspector, he says. Good night, Mr. Holmes, Hawkins says. Proceeds down the stairs. Hey, have you been listening to our podcast?
Uh-huh. It's a personal shout out.
Watson closes the door on Giordano's corpse. Holmes watches from the window as the cops load the Lucas into a police wagon. Then we hear Watson's voiceover. English justice looked kindly upon the young couple, and soon afterwards they left for Australia. There they found a new and happier life, free from the threat of the Red Circle. As the police wagon pulls away, the camera pans over to the Warrens' house where Vera the maid, Mrs. Hudson, and the Warrens are watching from the doorway. The episode ends with Holmes and Watson at the opera alongside Hawkins. Holmes is standing while the other two men are sitting. As the camera gets close, we see that Holmes is struggling to hold back tears. And the episode ends. And Bending the Willow has a note about this ending. The final shot of the red circle underlines Holmes' emotion, showing him with tears in his eyes while watching the opera in the very theater where Fermani was butchered. It was a shot that was put in later. Patrick Gowers telephoned Brett after seeing the rough cut of the film and said that in the final scene where Holmes and Watson are in a box at the opera, it appeared that the detective, eyes closed, seemed to be enjoying the music rather than remembering, quote, his friend Fermani.
See, it didn't even occur to me he might have been remembering his friend, because that's just not really Holmes.
I know. Brett took his point and persuaded June Wyndham Davies to insert the crying shot. I mean, again, Brett doesn't always make the best decision. But at that point, as far as Granada was concerned, he owned Holmes.
Yeah.
So they weren't going to get in the way of that. But yeah, it's equally plausible that Holmes is just transported by the Wagner.
By the music, yeah.
Which, when
The opera is what, Tristan and Isolde?
Yes, when he says it was a Wagner night earlier when he's talking about Fermani. Again,
Yeah.
that's lifted directly from the story that Fermani was a stagehand in a Wagner opera. So I can't stand Wagner myself, but except for one opera, Parsifal, but I mostly love the instrumental pieces of it, not the voices.
Yeah.
Always sounds like shrieking to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other notes on this one? This one was tight, better.
Yeah, pretty tight. It was an inoffensive little story.
Yeah, again, Bending the Willow was saying this is a almost magical confluence of events. The script was decent. Jeremy Brett was relatively well. Things that would never happen again.
Yeah, he's we'll talk about this for the next episode. But the next episode is a Sherlock Holmes story that Brett, his health was not good enough to allow him to film, so they subbed in Charles Gray as Mycroft instead.
Yeah. No, he was by this point he was on Digitalis. He was smoking heavily. He was on oxygen between scenes. He was swollen and bloated because of water retention. Just clearly on his way out.
Yeah.
And yet determined to film every episode that Granada would let him film. So I hate this sort of elegiac end that we're inevitably going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
It's very hard to watch someone deteriorating on screen in front of you. Unless it's someone you don't like.
I felt like that reading Terry Pratchett's books. Pratchett was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's, and the last few books of his, you can start to tell.
I think that's partly why Neil Gaiman got involved.
Really?
Neil Gaiman, he and Pratchett were really tight.
Yes. They had collaborated at one point. There's a podcast I was listening to that talked about this. The guy they were interviewing, a Terry Pratchett fan, commented, and I think he's probably right, that Neil Gaiman seemed to be more into Terry Pratchett than Pratchett was into Gaiman. And he was saying, if Pratchett put out like 2 books a year, like, the guy just didn't have time.
Yeah.
And I did realize mostly what you hear about, they're really close, that's just coming from Gaiman. Even when Pratchett was asked directly about their collaborations on Good Omens, like he just stuck strictly to what they were doing. Like he didn't really talk about Gaiman himself.
So, okay, I just stumbled on this on Reddit. It's a quote from one of the essays at the back of Good Omens, where Pratchett says, "It might come as a surprise to many to learn that Neil is neither a very nice, approachable guy or an incredible actor. He sometimes takes those shades off. The leather jacket, I'm not sure about." Yeah, that is, I guess, an indication he kind of
picked up on something.
Yeah. Yep.
But for anybody listening who doesn't know about Neil Gaiman, I would encourage you to Google him.
Yes. Go to the Neil Gaiman Uncovered subreddit.
Yeah. There's also a podcast that goes deep into it. I only listened to the first episode before I was like, yeah, he sucks. I don't need to hear the details.
Yes. Extremely manipulative and rapey. God, everybody's rapey these days. It sucks. Mm-hmm. You laugh because if you don't laugh, you'll scream.
Yeah. Well, that's what we think of The Red Circle. It was a nice, inoffensive story. Not really a whole lot to say about it.
Yeah, there's rapiness in this one too.
Yeah, there's.
But at least Jeremy Brett never did anything awful that we know of.
That we know of.
Yeah, and certainly Edward Hardwicke never did. That we know of.
That we know of.
I feel like, we have to caveat everything with that. What a world.
Seems like nice, generous guys.
Anything else to say?
No. How about you?
No, I think I'm talked out.
Well, that's all from us this week. If you've enjoyed the show and haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to support us, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever platform you use that allows you to leave reviews. Tell your friends and join us next time when we'll be discussing the Mazarin Stone,
which I've totally memory hold. So this will all be new to me.
I have totally memory hold The Red Circle. So This is all new to me.
All right. Talk to you.